So, Mike Bailey, hi, and
Hi, Charlie.
so much for agreeing to do this Zoom call as we enter into Lockdown 2, the sequel. And it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And obviously what we're speaking about now is about your fantastic new book, British Football's Greatest Grounds, subtitled 100 Must-See Football Venues. And as you can see, I've got a Drip and Pan venue behind me here. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. I mean, the book is literally just coming out, and we can give it lots of plugs during this talk. But I suppose one thing is I'm looking through it, wondering where did the idea come from? What's your sort of background, and where did you come up with the idea?
Well, I mean, I've been a football fan most of my life, and I've always enjoyed visiting new grounds. And about 6 years ago, I was flicking through a copy of non-league paper, and there are a couple of pictures in there of new grounds. I think Nantwich Town was in there, Northern Premier League side, and it looks a nice ground. And it just occurred to me, there must be thousands of grounds out there if you take Welsh, Scottish and English leagues from right down to kind of village level. And if, you know, like me, you have work commitments, social commitments, family commitments, even if you dedicated every Saturday for the rest of your life, within reason, you couldn't visit every ground, or you'd certainly struggle to anyway. So I kind of had the idea that there were a lot of ground books out at the time and ground guides, but nothing that kind of said, okay, well, here's a condensed list of perhaps grounds you should visit, or like a bucket list, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, find out and write a book about it. And that's really where the idea came from. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it's, I mean, looking at it, and I think at this point I should just kind of hold it up so people get a sense of oh, look at that, won't show my virtual background. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my virtual background in a second, then hold the book up towards the end. I can tell people this is a significantly weighty tome, both in terms of its research, its gorgeousness, and literally its weight. And I'm thinking this took quite a bit of time. Have you personally visited every ground? I mean, how have you gone about putting this together?
I've visited every ground with one exception. So, so there's 106 grounds in there. And I'll kind of explain how that happened. So initially it was the idea to get a short list of 100 grounds to put into the book. And I didn't want to base that on my personal opinion. Partly because I don't think I'd been to much more than 100 grounds. It would have been a very, you know, the list would have lacked a lot of substance, I think, if I'd just done that based on the ones I'd been to. And I didn't want a committee either, because a committee, the selection of that committee would have had some inherent bias perhaps as well from myself. So I decided to throw the vote open to the public. And I put a blog together, and I asked people, I explained the project, I asked people to nominate 5 I'd like to see in a book of this type. And I wanted them to give a reason as well. So they couldn't just say, you know, I support Chelsea, so Stamford Bridge needs to be in it. They had to give a reason. And the FA picked up on it. The Football Supporters Federation, as they were, picked up on it. Supporters Direct promoted it. Quite a few programme editors ran with an article. I think I even appeared on the Colin Murray show on Talk Sport, who gave a whole morning phone in, which was great. And a lot of people were nominations. And I put the blog out there. I think I had about 20,000 views. I set a deadline for people to submit their nominations. All the nominations, and that gave me a short list of 100. So I think about 350 different grounds nominated.
Wow.
And I then shortlisted that down to 100, ranked them in of those that had the most votes, and set off going to visit them all. And that was back in 2014. So it took a long time to visit them all, and it took a long time to research them as well. The original publisher I was going to go with, unfortunately, couldn't commit to the project in the long term, so I had to find a new publisher. So there were sort of delays that accumulated along the way. And eventually I met up with Pitch Publishing, and they've been fantastic throughout the, really have to say that. And then we were going to release the book a bit earlier this year, then obviously COVID-19 kicked in. And over the summer, we did to just revisit the list and put in some grounds that had just missed out. So we kind of took out some grounds that you could no longer visit. So when the vote started in 2014, you had grounds like the Boleyn Ground, West Ham. You had Boston United's ground, ground, Brentford's Griffin Park. And what we wanted to do, well, we wanted to honour the original vote, but because you can't technically visit them anymore, and I know Bootham City still, Bootham City, Bootham Crescent.
Bootham Crescent, yeah.
But realistically, it's at the end of its days. Very sad.
Right. Okay.
So move 6 of the grounds that were either no longer there or kind of hosted football for the last time into a kind of ghost ground section, and promote 6 that had just missed out. So that gave us a kind of a slightly refreshed 100 and 6 ghost grounds. And one of the ones we actually I tell a lie, we put 5 in. We added the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now,
right,
a little bit arbitrary. It kind of goes against perhaps the ethos of the book, but we decided that we applaud it for being a world-class stadium. And we figured, okay, well, let's put it in there as a contemporary reference point, and we'll clearly state that this wasn't voted for. It was put in for these reasons. And hopefully it doesn't go against the kind of spirit of the book too much. So that's kind of final.
I mean, if I'm honest, Mike, when the book came through the post the other day, I actually, as strange as I did actually look for grounds such as the Super Stadium, such as Tottenham's new ground. And I was sort of pleased to put them there because I think it just demonstrates the incredible breadth that you have of football grounds. It's not necessarily all the good old quaint tumble down kind of grounds. There's a whole range of grounds that people will see in here. And apart from one obvious exception, we're not going to kind of give a spoiler in terms of where different grounds are your favourite football ground is, but there's every chance that you'll find it here, including from relative new builds to ones which have been there over 100 years.
Definitely. And that's the one thing that I really, that was very rewarding about doing the public vote, because the range of grounds that came in was staggering. Everything from village football to the Premier League, and sometimes from people, from the same person. So one person might nominate 5 grounds. One could be Anfield, could be the Pilot Field, Hastings United, in the same vote. Some people just voted for non-league grounds. Some people just voted for Premier League grounds. And I think that's what to make it a democratic public vote, because you have to have that that spectrum of opinion, because the football landscape in England is so diverse. I mean, there's only a very small clutch of professional, in inverted commas, grounds, and there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of non-league park pitches almost that that constitute the rest. So I think you need to have that representation to kind of give a full understanding of what Britain's landscape looks like. And often you'll find that grounds at the low end of the pyramid have some of the most spectacular backdrops and interesting stories. So I was really glad that the book captures that kind of depth.
And it certainly does, and this is hopefully just in time for the Christmas market as well, because as I said, the breadth of it strikes me as a book which is going to appeal both to the absolute football ground and football aficionados who love looking into grounds and there's something about. But I tell you, at the same time, it's going to appeal to people that know very little about it and maybe don't really understand or know about the connection that people have to local football grounds. And I think maybe in looking through this book, they're going to understand it far better. I mean, you've been involved in football for some time. You've put this incredible book together. What's your theory as to why football grounds have this incredible importance within their community, do you think?
Well, I mean, there are multiple reasons. And one, it's generational, particularly for older grounds. You could stand on a terrace where you stood with your father and your grandfather and your father's grandfather, and you go back generations. There's that immediate family link and heritage link for a start. I think for a lot of people, a football ground is and perhaps for some people, and I've seen it firsthand at an older age, one of the few opportunities to socialise outside the house with like-minded people. If you take that away, and we've seen that a lot during the pandemic when football shut down, you take that away, it leaves a hole that can't really be filmed even. I mean, psychologists have actually looked at this. I did try and find...
Have they? Okay.
Yeah, well, there was an article 4 years ago that I'm not sure if it's slightly tongue in cheek, but it said that psychiatrists looked at it and they've kind of decided that pre-season blues was a very real thing. You often hear about fans saying they feel down when there's no football on. So that end point between the season finishing and pre-season starting with empty Saturdays looming ahead. And studies in America, USA Today did a week's feature on what the impact of the loss of American football and going to the ground could be in terms of finances, but also in terms of the psychological impact. And there's been the Loyola University Medical Center have done studies. The lack of sport in someone's life, you've taken away all of a sudden, is akin to having a crash after drug withdrawal. So it's a very real thing. And I think if you combine all these things, you take something away which is a constant in someone's life, and maybe it may have been for 30, 40, 50 years, and take that away, then, and I think as a result, grounds are, they're different things to different people. They might offer sanctity, escapism. They might have a chance to let your hair down, meet friends, and it's just another avenue for.
I think maybe for me, one of the things that when I thought about this question myself, I was thinking it's the word continuity, and I think you've talked about it in terms of the grandfather, grandmother, grandfather, granddaughter. They're just the generational things, and even if it's not your own family, it's someone's family. Like football stadiums seem to have an incredible continuity. They've seen everything. I think with football, they've seen highs and lows, promotions and relegations. They've encapsulated all the emotions, haven't they, in one place?
Exactly, and I think also identity. I don't think the impact of a football ground and club on someone's identity can be underplayed. Grounds are often expression of place, an expression of who you are, an extension of who you are. And I think there is something that can be robbed of a person's personality when they're not in that group setting. There's a really good, there are good examples littered throughout football. So I think there's a guy called John Bale. I'm thinking it was about a book about sport and society, where he actually looked at the impact of football grounds and that kind of, and it's a very kind of real sociological phenomenon, which all sounds academic, but very interesting. And it is that kind of extension of identity, sense of who you are and your surroundings being part of your personality. So,
and you know what else I think is, Mike, as well, is you can go to a football ground and have a good old shout. And I just think
there
else,
is that. There are very few other avenues where you can do that, and it's sanctioned.
It's great. We often say about our ground. It's true of lots of grounds. I'm sure it is that in terms of Lewes, this is the biggest meeting of people in the town, the area that happens every week, every other week. There's no other place where this many people get together from the same town, is there? It's even though essentially you're there to watch football, of course, as we know, you're also there to talk to the person you maybe only ever see at the football match, and sometimes you don't know their name, but you know their face really well. There's that community, isn't there, as well?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, to get into the kind of the final bit of this conversation, and the reason for my backdrop and the reason for my shirt and everything, I must admit, is there was a rather, and I might be biased, but a rather pleasing and thrilling culmination to the number one ground in this book. And without making it incredibly obvious, I wonder if you could tell us where that ground is, but also as you reveal that, also be interested to hear some of the actual comments, because I know you talk to fans and they talk to you and about what the reasons that were given for people choosing this as their number one ground in Britain. So over to you, Mike, for the big reveal.
So the number one ground in the book, the one that received the highest amount of votes, and I'll be honest, the highest amount of votes by quite a long way, was the Dripping Pan, Lewes FC. Now, I've been to the Dripping Pan times, and it's a fantastic ground. And I think the thing that, when I was thinking about this and talking to friends and saying, well, okay, why do you think the Dripping Pan polled so many votes? I think the one thing that there was consensus on is that if you look at all the reasons various grounds were voted to the book, it could be location, history, backdrop, friendliness, food, drink, of a day out. It might be nice pubs nearby. The Dripping Pan has all those elements, And I think that if you add all those things together, it makes it quite a unique venue. And I think people, and they're not just, that's just not obviously my opinion, that's the opinion of people who voted in the book as well. And I actually jotted down some of the reasons that people gave for at the top of this interview, that when I started the poll, I didn't want just people to say Old Trafford, Anfield, the Dripping Pan. I want you to give a reason what it might be, understand a bit more. And some people came back with a few words, but some people came back with the entire. It's all right. I've got 2 or 3 I'd like to read here.
Oh, please, no, would love to hear these reasons.
This is verbatim from what. So first of all, a lady called Nina, who's a Hampton and Richmond Borough fan, says, you can see the white cliffs of the south coast in the ground. It's the gem of British non-league football. And the clubhouse is colourful and unique as it displays scarves from around the world and the great selection of creative match day posters Lewes FC are famous for. So I really can't argue with any of that. We then got a nomination from Roger, who's an Exeter City fan. So, which is quite good because he's not just non-league fans voting with non-league clubs and
yeah.
It's a wide variety. He says the Dripping Pan. Don't you just love that name for a start? That's true. It is. It's a highly unusual and very very seductive name. He said the setting with a natural amphitheatre on the popular sign behind the goal gives excellent angles and heights to watch from. The club is also a growing representative and are warm and welcome and embrace innovation of a scale that is sustainable and imaginative. So there you go. And finally, we've got one from Luke, a Glossop North End fan, who comments on the food and drink. And he says, the links with Harvey's Brewery make this a must visit. And I should say that Harvey's Brewery got numerous mentions in the mentions. He also finishes the quote by saying, it's also the only place where you can eat hummus on the terrace and not be laughed at, which I actually quote. So I thought that was a superb quote. But there's a real warmth for the club that comes through. And as I said, it's not just one thing. You can see just for those 3 random samples I selected, it's the view, it's the sense of camaraderie, the fan ownership, it's the clubhouse, it's the scarves on the wall, encouraging people to leave scarves, pennants, memorabilia from their club when they visit, allowing home fans and away fans to mingle on the terrace and drink together. All these combined, I think, set the Dripping Pan apart, and certainly do for the numerous people that voted. So
I mean, it's well, that is, I mean, you know, as they say in acceptance speeches, on behalf of, and I'd like to thank, but really the greatest thing about this is that this is from people who visit football grounds. This is from fans, exactly. And as you said, they will have had hundreds and hundreds of grounds to choose from. So that's, I think we're really quite chuffed to receive that. I think we're also very aware here at Lewes that there is a jewel to look after. It's quite an old jewel in some ways, and it does take some looking after.
Definitely.
I'd like to feel that as we continue to hopefully still improve the facilities and improve the experience here, that essence of the Dripping Pan experience will that's one thing that won't change, we hope, as we go through. So I just want to sort of to wrap up by sort of saying that this is a most fantastic book, and as I read the entry for the Dripping Pan, I was really struck by a whole bunch of brilliant facts that I had no idea about, and I live here and I come to this ground all the time. And I would really encourage people that, you know, the chances are, buy this book because you will find your ground in it, and you might think it should be higher and you might think it should be number 1. I'm pretty sure if you expect to find the ground, you will. And I'm pretty sure as well that you will find out things about your own ground that you don't know either, including nice things that other people say about it. And the photography is superb, and this is a real labour of love. So I would say congratulations, apart from anything else.
Thank you, it's very kind of you. Thank you.
You know, it really is. And I think we should definitely finish with a plug.
Well, the best thing is probably to go to Pitch Publishing's website. So on Pitch Publishing's website, there's a URL for the book, and underneath there are 5 or 6 outlets where you can actually purchase it from.
Yeah, I just want to sort of wrap up by again saying thanks so much. It's a fantastic book. Please go and buy it, and buy it for people that you know who love football grounds, and buy it for people that think that they don't like football. Maybe people that live here and think, I don't get it. What's football about? And I tell you, in reading this book, you'll find out not only about the football grounds, which are the heart of football, but you'll find out about the heart of football itself, because so much of the stuff quoted in here gives you such a fantastic insight. I think as you've invited people to eulogize about grounds without knowing it, they've really eulogized about the football that they love, just watching football.
Absolutely.
I think as well. So thanks so much for your time, Mike. And we'll wrap up here. And I don't know if we'll ever get on to kind of a volume 2. This is a difficult one to kind of surpass, but thanks so much for your time, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.